This is the one we're staying in. We're in the studio just above the garage, the first part of it. You can see it's right on what is actually a canal, a man-made canal rather than a river. And this is typical of this area we're in at Surfers Paradise. Quick tour of some of the inside of the studio. This is the workbench area. I think it used to be set up as an office. So there's a couple of beds in here. Won't show you the other one. Jess is working in bed. I've set up at the desk here. You can see the neighbour's place here. A lot of people have pools. This is quite a warm climate.
Do you have a pool?
Yeah, we do have a pool. We've got a small kitchenette. We do have a microwave, not really big enough to do much cooking in, but a little. And we've got this nice little sitting area, which we'll be sure to use later. And plants have been used to screen the bedroom from the living area, which works quite well. I'm not filming you, Jess. And you can see, the view. We are right on the canal here. There's this canal system built right through the back of Surfers Paradise where people build their houses. Well-established area. And as you can see, there's the cityscape, Surfers Paradise, 5 minutes drive from light in this apartment. I love the fact that in one direction we're looking out here with all these big windows out to the city. And then in the other direction, we've got a view, just over the neighbourhood, but we've got lots of light here as well. And although very different from our place in Byron Bay, one thing they've got in common, which I really like, is this concrete floor. It's warmer and softer than you might think. This morning I had my monthly peer mentoring session with an industry colleague. We kind of overlap a little bit in our fields of interest, but not really. He's actually presentation skills and presence or professional presentation, both capital P and little p, is his area. And I've actually used him as a coach for my own presentation skills. But we discovered quite an affinity in terms of the way we approach life, the way we want to be of service, our values and ethics. And we're both individuals working in our own business, so plenty of common interests there. So we've started this peer mentoring thing, which we do once a month. One of the things I really like about the peer mentoring and the monthly cycle is that it pushes me to sit down and reflect on where I'm at each month and helps hold me accountable for the things I say I'm going to do on a monthly basis. We always check in with each other. Did you do the things you said you were going to do, and what's going on for you, and kind of hold the space for each other to explore that. So I've got my annual plan broken down in this workbook where I look at a number of different areas. So it's kind of holistic. It's not just about my business or work. And I look at the vision I have for myself, my purpose, my roles, habits. So this 3 to Thrive is around habits for success. And then I have annual goals, and I break them down into quarterly goals. For my work goals, I then have another spreadsheet which breaks it down a little bit further. I need a bit more detail on my work goals. And then I keep a spreadsheet where I look at where I am each month, and I look at, I identify key activities in areas of marketing, program development and delivery. And I map those out and keep track of whether I'm doing those. I've also recently just started going back to a notebook to do some more planning and tracking using an approach that Helen Blunden had laid out, a template that I saw on the internet. And I've actually looked at doing it for the whole month. And I've said, what are the key things I want to explore or read this month? What are the key things I need to create or deliver? I've added deliver. Helen's just had create. What is my networking and conversation goals, the key things I need to do there? Contribution. And reflection via blogging and vlogging, as well as key action. I'm aiming to do a Working Out Loud post on my website this week about that template and where it fits in and how I've adapted it from what Helen did. I'm finding it quite useful for thinking about the different ways I work and learn and focusing, because I tend to take on too much. So I'm always looking for ways of really focusing on the things that matter. Speaking of which, I've got to get back to work. We're doing 3 more podcast recordings for Learning Uncut this week. We're doing them on Wednesday. And I've done a discussion session, a preparation session with one of our guests this morning and trying a different approach. I'm aware of my tendency to overstructure things and worry that sometimes that kind of squeezes some of the life out of them, or like doesn't give them enough breathing space to be more natural and evolve. One of the things Karen and I have been looking at as co-hosts for the podcast is how to ensure we put our guests at ease. And one suggestion we had from someone else was looking at just mind mapping the conversation rather than putting it in text, which can run the risk of it being over scripted. So I've done a mind map today. It's very easy for this one because the guest has actually done 2 blog posts on the little project or topic that we're working on. So I've been able to use it as the basis for structure. So we'll get them to introduce themselves, give a bit of background to themselves, then the business context, organisation, the role that was the focus of the project and the challenge, a little bit about journey mapping, which is the basis of this discussion or the key point of this discussion. What is it? Why did they choose to apply it? And then we'll dig into the what you did. So we've talked around 4 aspects of how she went about doing a journey map for an employee experience, and she and I have agreed some areas, particularly around the data gathering and using data gathering as a way of engaging stakeholders, that we'll look at in the podcast, outcomes and learnings, and our standard question about the individual's professional development. And then time to take a break. We were going to cycle over to Surfers for an acai bowl for lunch, but I think we'll be driving in this rain. So it was actually a public holiday here in Queensland, the state we're in at the moment, and shops weren't open because of the wet weather. Lots of things we might otherwise have done outdoors today weren't available to us. So we had lunch and then came back and have just been hanging around the studio apartment, nice and cosy. I've sat here on the bed and I've been doing some more preparation for the 3 podcast interviews, which we're doing for Learning Uncut this week. So as I prepare for these podcasts and reflect on how some of the discussions have gone, I'm noticing that it's easier with some types of topics and some guests from learning and development backgrounds to get into the nitty-gritty, the details of how they did something, how they used a particular approach or a particular tool or a new approach to delivery of learning. So in some cases we're able to get to that quite naturally, particularly where we're talking about specific projects. In other cases, it's a lot harder to get to that level of detail. So sometimes we're talking with guests about an overall approach they might be taking or rolling out. So for instance, agile project management approaches or agile approaches to design and delivery, or human-centered or design thinking approaches to analysis of learners and design of learning solutions. Now, in these cases, to get to a level of detail that we're wanting to get to, we're having to come up with some new tactics. So, for instance, if possible, get them to focus in on a specific project or a specific time they did this thing and talk us through that step by step and try to pick something typical. One of the ones I'm working on now is one of these where it's going to be a little bit harder to get down to the detail. But this is part of what we're learning how to do to get the right results out of the podcast.